woke up early, dawn's out shining. Coffee brewing, thoughts aligning. Business world keeps redefining. Success is more than just headlining. Ray's got wisdom, Jim's got vision.
Yes, folks, we're back again. I'm Fred McMurray with Ray Pillar and Jim Treleaven for another interesting episode of Pillar's Principles. Ray, you've been gone for a while. We're happy to be back on the air. Where you been? Briefly. We got a show to do, so briefly.
I've been in Florida to try and escape the cold air, but guess what? The cold air followed me.
Yeah.
And
they got snow in Houston and way south in Florida. And it was fun to watch all these Southerners kind of freak out over it. But we were back home in Crossville, Tennessee now. So enjoying a little warmer weather here. Actually, it's kind of weird. We're north. We're still getting warmer weather.
I buy that. It was 31 when I went out to the car yesterday, and everyone was like, "This is cold in California." It's like, why do I have to keep scraping the windows?
Yeah.
We're gonna hit Jim. He's made my life kind of wild yesterday with 13 new interns. But why don't you introduce our guest?
Go
ahead, Ray.
So our guest today is Eric Martin from Happinest Brands, and I think we have interviewed Eric about a year and a half ago. So he is an excellent person to have on the show. He has a lot of insight into this franchising industry.
So Eric, I'll jump in with after the kind of lackluster introduction. And say, I love one of your brands is Mosquito Hunters, and my niece did this little cartoon of the Handmaiden's Tale, where this little girl is being attacked by a mosquito, and this big foot comes down. And every time I see that, I think of Mosquito Hunters. Mosquito Hunters was one of your brands, but why don't you catch us up since you were last on about a year and a half ago about what's been happening with that Happinest?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, Fred, and great to be here with you guys. And Ray, I can definitely relate. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. That's where I hang my hat. And while it's been cold, we haven't had any snow here yet. And I'm talking to people in Texas that are getting snow. I'm like, what's going on with this? It's weird, but I'll take it. I'm not going to complain. Believe me, we got ours coming, I'm sure. But great to be here again, guys. Eric Martin, I'm the Senior VP of Franchise Development for Happinest Brands. And I've been here now for about 8 years. And I've been in franchising now going on about 17 years. So when you've been around this game as long as we all have, you see things done well, you see some things not done so well, and some challenges. We've been through it all. And nothing's easy, as we know, about business ownership. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. If you get the right people involved with you, you tend to have really good results. But I joined the company and it was Lawn Doctor. All right. Lawn Doctor is a proud brand that's going on 60 years of franchising, started in New Jersey. It's a lawn care, lawn treatment, lawn conditioning company, very seasoned brand and well-respected. I call it the McDonald's of home services. And I say that for a reason. Lawn Doctor is one of 3 brands in franchising that have been an Entrepreneur Media Franchise 500 recipient for 46 straight years.
Wow.
The other 2 are McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts, to give you perspective there. So we're kind of an elite company, but I share that to start with. Lawn Doctor is the anchor. We started to create a lot of systems, marketing tools, sales processes, and in-house sales center. And about 7-8 years ago, actually, when I was coming on board, our chairman and CEO, Scott Frith, who you guys may know of, said, Eric, team, we've got a lot of resources. We got a great company, great support coaches, a lot of vendors, a marketing team, managed media, call center to help our Lawn Doctor owners grow and thrive. we can do this with other emerging brands in the home services space. We're going to start to acquire some home service concepts that might kind of want to look like Lawn Doctor someday, but don't have the capital, don't have the resources, don't have the relationships to go from a handful to hundreds of locations like Lawn Doctor is. So speaking to what Fred spoke to a moment ago about his niece, Mosquito Hunters was our first acquisition back in 2018. And we want to bring brands on board, get them acclimated, and I'll talk more about our strategies and kind of how we identify brands if you'd like to today. But it started with Mosquito Hunters as the first next brand outside of Lawn Doctor underneath the Happinest umbrella. Then we acquired Maids, which is a cleaning company, all organic, Green Seal certified, really unique value proposition in the cleaning space. And then we also have acquired a brand called Sparkle Squad. I think, Fred, last time we spoke, we are just getting ready to launch Sparkle Squad in the US, and boy, do I have some updates on that one. But we also have Elite Window Cleaning, which is in Canada. We're a global brand now, so we have a brand up there that does window cleaning and gutter cleaning, house washing, and pressure washing as well. So we're very big into home services. We love recurring revenue models. We love membership models. We don't want to have models that have a ton of employees, and we certainly don't want to have a big, heavy bricks and mortar need. We want to keep those expenses down and have a business that's scalable, high gross margins, high net margins, and franchise owners that are really looking for capitalizing on the $600 billion growing industry of home services. It's this do-it-for-me society we're all living in right now. People don't want to clean their windows. They don't want to take care of their lawns or their pests or clean the house. This applies to businesses in many cases as well on the commercial side. So there's a huge opportunity to bring a white glove, white collar experience, sophisticated systems in marketing, sophisticated sales processes to a blue collar industry that is not necessarily known for great customer service and follow up. And that's really what we're trying to do, is attract white glove, executive minded owners that want to capitalize on taking advantage of this blue collar industry that has a lot of independence and moms and pops that couldn't dream of having the resources that a Happinest Brands has. So we're well on our way. We got a long way to go. We want to continue to acquire brands in the years to come and build out this Happinest Brands portfolio. So we have a good distribution of brands and a lot of different markets, and a lot of magic can happen when you have ad dollars going in for 5, 6, 7, 7, 8 brands in an area. As you guys can appreciate, leads are coming in for a brand from impressions, and those can be repositioned as they become a customer on one brand to possibly other brands in that area, owned by the same owner or maybe a different one. Either way, it's great and everybody wins. But that's what we're building here, is really an ecosystem of home service brands and bringing a kind of a marketing and sophisticated element to them.
All I gotta say is, when you said white glove and mosquito hunters, all I keep getting the image in my head of like dirty gloves from never mind, splatting mosquitoes. Sorry, I got to get one of those in somehow.
All good.
Hey, Jim, which one you want to ask the next question? Now, since I got us started there, which one?
Go ahead, Jim. You're still muted.
I was muting the dog. Sorry. I totally agree about that. We don't want to do it ourselves, but but the question is, and you touched on it briefly, Eric, was the how you work the synergy between all the different brands under the one umbrella. Do they interact? Are they marketed individually? Are they marketed together, or how does that work?
It's a really good question, Jim. And when you think about our strategy, what our leadership team is doing, we look at categories first, brands second. Right. So we are looking at a couple of different categories right now that we're scoring that we have interest in bringing into Happinest, but a lot of detail goes into this. You have to figure out who is the leader of this current company. What is the size of it? Does this mesh well with our portfolio? Would this particular concept mesh well with our call center and our marketing team? Can we bring value to this founder, to these current owners that they may have? And can we really expand this footprint? Is this a brand that we think others will like, and can we grow it and have a good distribution coast to coast? So we're looking at a lot of different things, but getting back to the root of your question, the founder of that business needs to be aligned with us. We are big on founder-led franchise systems. You look at Mosquito Hunters as an example. Andy Fuller, who's in Chicago, owns a Mosquito Hunters business in Chicago. He's the leader of the brand. He's the face of it. he has plugged in to what we consider kind of an accelerant of Happiness. So each of these brands that we have and brands that we bring on, they all maintain their own identity. They all have their own CEO, brand coaches, franchise owners. There's kind of a subculture, but then there's the Happiness culture where we bring a lot of resource to all the brands. And when you ask, do they interact together? Absolutely they do. When you bring owners into a market and there's 2 or 3 or more Happiness brands there currently, naturally you're going to introduce that owner to those existing owners, and there's synergies. Well, hey, we can share some ideas and do some co-marketing and co-branding and do home shows together. And I've got some employees that might have some interest in some more hours working with you. There's a lot of ways that we can create harmony and synergies there. We're still very early in this strategy. As this continues to grow, now you're going to see ad dollars going in and customers coming in from an impression on a brand and saying, hey, I'm interested in lawn care, but I'm also interested in pest control, cleaning, window cleaning. When I need home services, I want to work with a good company that's going to provide a good experience. So we see this taking more and more shape in the future, but owners will meet together. We do conference calls with all franchise owners across brands and kind of share strategies and best practices. Because as we all know, rising tides raise all boats, and you get an owner who's been around for 10 years, home services are home services. It's just the widget might be different. A lot of the elements and mechanics are similar. So we want to pay that forward and have those more experienced owners share those practices with emerging brands and new owners coming on board. So there's a lot of cool things we're doing, but we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg right now of where this is going to be going in the next 10 to 20 years.
That sort of brings to mind cross-brand advertising marketing. Do you do any of that? And if you do you do it from the bottom up or from the top down?
It's a great question, Ray. And we're really kind of just getting into that more kind of in a grassroots organic way. I will say this, and in the years to come, there is a happinest.com. It's kind of an elementary site right now, more of a holding space. We have to build more distribution for us to really share and market and drive lead flow and then pass on top down, bottom up. You got to have a footprint, and you got to have 4 or 5 brands that are all in an area in a similar proximity for us to take full advantage of doing that in major markets around the country. So as it stands today, it's, hey, new owner, here are some existing owners. Let's kind of sync you guys up here so you can collaborate. Here are some ideas that we're giving you, but see what you can do at that local level and sharing referrals and resources and customers that you may have. We're going to formalize this more in the future. And this isn't a 20-year out. This is a 5-ish year out plan for us as we continue the footprint build. But when you can drive leads pretty effectively, and we know, and I think you guys understand this as well, it's all about the customer acquisition cost compared to the annual and lifetime value. CAC to LTV, we talk about it a lot. If we can start driving in the future $0 leads for a lot of franchise owners that got that referral from an owner who maybe establish that relationship, everybody benefits from that because that works in different ways across brands.
Wow, so much to unpack there. Part of me just heard there's going to be a Happiness channel somewhere, home improvement channel somewhere. Later. Okay, so there, like I said, there's a whole lot to unpack there. I want to go back to where you're trying to grow. So where are your best geographic penetration areas, and where's targeted for most growth? What areas are targeted for most growth?
Sure. That's a fair question. And as you know, it's going to depend on the brand.
Exactly.
Kind of the stage it's in the life cycle, how many owners are in. Lawn Doctor is considered a legacy brand. There's about 300 roughly viable locations remaining for us to penetrate, right? So in a legacy brand, you start seeing different things in my experience. You start seeing transfers internally, families taking over, kind of legacy businesses where mom and dad started, the son or daughter is going to step in, or they might be selling to a neighbor and retiring. There's about 300 locations available, mainly for Lawn Doctor in particular. It's kind of Midwest, Southeast, and the western part of the country. We're making a bigger reach into some newer owners in Idaho and California, in Washington and Oregon are coming online. Not a market or area of the country that we've typically penetrated very much. It's always been kind of the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, eastern part of the country, because that's where Lawn Doctor was born. So we're expanding further and further west, and there's good opportunities there. When you start to look at mosquito hunters as an example, a lot of territory. There's about 150-ish roughly locations around the country. So most areas have at least parts of it still available. There are some MSAs that are kind of tapped out right now. You know, the markets that you always kind of go through first, like your Houstons or your Raleigh, things like that. You kind of see those areas, kind of dense areas filling in, but tons of wide open white space for hunters. Eco-Maids, same situation. There's about 60-ish locations around the country right now, currently at the time of this video. So that's going to continue to expand. Sparkle Squad grew very rapidly in its first year. I will say it was explosive. Ray and Fred, when we talked last time, we were just getting this off the ground.
Right,
we now have
right.
60 locations of Sparkle Squad around the country. So again,
Mhm.
just about
That's
any
good.
area of the country you're going to look at with a Sparkle Squad, an Eco-Maids, and Mosquito Hunters is going to have viable turf. Maybe your home zip code is sold, but one right next door is available and the territory is built. So we very rarely have to say we're not open. More so we do that for Lawn Doctor today, as you can imagine with the stage that we're in.
Jim,
So,
go ahead.
you mentioned expansion geographically. Are there opportunities to expand into other home services? And I'll get crazy, things like plumbing and electrical, appliance repair, whatever. I'm thinking randomly. But I don't know if you've where you are considering that as well.
Love the question, Jim. And you've teed me up for something I've been just anxiously wanting to talk about, because it's a little bit newer for Happinest brand. So when you develop relationships with customers and they start to trust you, like you, want to work with you, they naturally want to work with you more. What else can we do? All of our brands at Happinest have upsell, upgrade, bundle elements. When you start to think about Lawn Doctor as an example, well, we do fertilization and weed control, but we also do seeding, aeration, tree and shrub care, different pest services. You can kind of see we can add this, add this, add this. The same would apply for mosquito hunters. We do perimeter pest. We do ants and spiders. We do mosquito, tick, and flea. We also now have rodent control. We've widened that offering to appeal to different types of customers and be able to grow relationships. Eco-Maids, another example. We can start to add in bi-weekly or weekly services. We can do refrigeration or oven cleanings. We want to see different ways we can expand the relationship and help that consumer. In Sparkle Squad, as you know, window cleaning is one element, but we do gutter cleaning, house washing, pressure washing. All of those things are exciting and ways to grow those relationships. Now, the newest service line we've brought in that is homegrown, we did not go out and acquire these models. We lifted holiday lighting and decoration as an element to our seasonal businesses. Now, as you guys are kind of nodding your heads, if holiday lighting was a baseball game, we're not going to talk about sports, Fred, I promise you. I'm just using this as an analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to go there. This is like the top of the second. Okay, it's really early in this game, and there's a lot of game to go. We're seeing it becoming formalized, more professionalized. Some counterbalance seasonal brands are saying, well, why can't we maybe add the... We feel like we're kind of one of the first ones to really become sophisticated with our own vendors, our own software platform. We have great advisors and consultants. Separate training owners go through to understand the mechanics of the lease model that we use. It's a very profitable service line. The biggest challenge that we saw when we started to identify this being a good fit for us is you've got this compressed window and you can only do so much volume regardless of what other business you might have. So you have to be really on point and be able to capture that. What we have as an advantage is we have owners that have vehicles, equipment, technicians, customers, and a counterbalance season that it can roll right into this and generate significant and meaningful revenue and profitability in these windows. And the beautiful thing about our model is we're putting lights up, we're taking them down, we're storing them, and we're coming back next year, the year after that. These lights that we use last for years. The profit margin is insane, especially in year 2, 3, and beyond, because you're just reinstalling the same lights that the customer did the deposit on a year ago. It's a fraction of the time to install them. And they're very happy because they can see it. It's beautiful. They depend on it every year. It's a magical time. People are willing to spend money during the holidays, as we've learned. The key to this success is getting as many of those installations done as early as possible. I'm not going to go into more detail than that, but we really have a good process for that. Our owners love it.
When you say as early as possible, does this mean I'm going to start seeing Christmas lights out at the beginning of September?
There's a very good chance you might see them being installed, but not necessarily turned on. There's a reason that people want to get, as businesses, these done early. Obviously, you want to keep some space free during the biting time. So there's a lot that we unpack with our clients when we start to talk about it, and they start to go, wow, this is a business in and of itself. Outside of the core model that I'm looking at, I've got this opportunity to. And really, guys, the reason we did this, outside of the revenue potential for the owner and the profitability piece, and just kind of having a year-round predictable stream of cash flow, was employee retention. I will tell you guys, having done this for many years in seasonal business, is one of the biggest challenges a franchisee is going to face is turnover. It's very hard to start, stop, reinvent yourself, find your new crew. You got this big customer base that likes you, but how am I going to fulfill that demand consistently? You have people come and go. So this really keeps that continuity in place.
And I would see tremendous value actually from the perspective of your customers, in the sense that it's a one-stop shop. You don't have to be spreading around for different suppliers for different things. I think that your customers would see tremendous value in that, actually.
We're in the business of customer service and customer retention. And I will tell you, Jim, it's a very smart comment. The thing that really appeals to investors, to people, and I will say our avatar as a franchise owner has changed in the last decade. It's a much more sophisticated buyer than ever before, because they see the opportunity to scale, maintain membership models, right? It's like, I spend money to make the impression, to get the click, to get the lead, get the sale done. I want to keep that customer for years. Good retention is critical. And our average across Happinest, we're north of 83% across the brands of year-over-year retention of customers. So you keep those customers happy. You don't pay to get them again. You maintain that relationship, and that revenue continues to grow as you're adding services, and very accretive to profitability for a franchise owner. So when you get a model like this, it opens the doors up a little bit to people that may years ago have said, I'm a heavier hitter. I'm looking for something a little more sophisticated. Now it's like home services, $600 billion industry, millennials, baby boomers, do it for me society, sophomore at competition, not a lot of sophistication, multiple streams of revenue. I can scale this thing, a van and a guy at a time, and do this pretty rapidly and have a really high margin business, and really just kind of beat the competition to the leads and the sales, because we have these tools and marketing and sales centers. So people look at this and they go, this is different. This isn't, oh, you got a nice little home service concept. It's big business today.
Yeah, it certainly is. And one of the things that people will buy a franchise for is for that. In other words, it's a brand. It's a brand that's out there that everybody pretty much will recognize. So what I would like to know, Eric, is you have a lot of wonderful brands out there. What is it that you look for in a prospective franchise owner, and what, if any, incentives do you offer for them?
Sure. It's a really great question. So I'll start with the incentives. They're really, in franchising, there are license fees, there are marketing upfront, there's vehicle leases, you're setting those things up, equipment, et cetera. So, we do a discount for certain owners. Like if you're a veteran, an ethnic minority,
that's good.
First responder, we want to thank people for their service, obviously, and appreciate the types of owners that we're attracting. So we do offer a percentage discount off of the license fees. But when you start to look at the avatar, who we look for as a franchise owner, home services are lower investments typically, because you don't have the bricks and mortar. So it kind of opens the door for more types of individuals. And as we all know, in our world, some people are meant for business ownership. Some people are not. And it's upon us to let them know you're not a fit for what we're doing, or in our opinion, a good fit for what we're needing from an owner. So, and some people are. So it opens the doors for more opportunities for more types of people. What I see as a common thread for our franchise owners, I will start with this. To me, success in business and success in life really and truly comes down to four things. I'll start with that as kind of the cornerstone. People that are successful, certainly in business, it comes down to execution. It comes down to accountability. It comes down to work ethic, and it comes down to resiliency. All right. It takes time to build a business. So when you start looking at people and asking them questions, it's what have you done in your background? How do you feel about consultative sales? Are you comfortable hiring people and managing different levels of people that you may not have managed before? Are you comfortable reaching out to referral sources and doing what we call ground game and sponsoring events, putting yourself out there, comfortable being uncomfortable? Are those things that you like? Are you good with people in general? And can you really and truly build a good team that's accountable and hold them accountable? Obviously, most people that get beyond the cursory glance have the resources financially. We're vetting out those that do not. But I would say beyond those 4 things I mentioned, you got to be coachable, open-minded. People that come into franchising, I say, are very entrepreneurial, not so much entrepreneurial. I know entrepreneurs as you do. They're founders, they're visionaries, they're strategic, they're thinking up ideas. They take years to develop brands that can be duplicatable. Franchise owners want it to work now. I want a system that's proven. I want to plug into it. I know I still have to play the levels. There's no skipping the game, but I want to work hard at my business and make this my primary focus. I can build an asset that I can monetize someday, get my family involved in whatever that why or that North Star is. So it goes back to the attributes, the type of individual that it is, the type of, ethic, their work ethic they're bringing to this, and are they comfortable being an ambassador, being the face of a business? You have a brand. You're exactly right. People recognize that. But all franchises are run by people like us. They're individuals that are hiring people, that are doing jobs. Just because the brand is there, that's great. How the execution at the local level is taking place is critically important. So those are kind of the things that we talk about with candidates. Does this sound like you? Do you think you could be comfortable doing this? Each of our brands have different little elements to them. As an example, like EcoMaids, there's a lot of staffing involved in that, way more than that of Lawn Doctor or a Sparkle Squad or an EcoMaids. So it might be someone for EcoMaids that has a little more comfort in building a larger scale team as compared to maybe a fraction of that for maybe a pest control or lawn care type of business. So depending on the brand they're looking at, we're going to change our talk track and our questioning a little bit, but so many of those common themes are similar across not just Happinest brands, but other brands as well.
Dear God, it sounds like you went to the Ray Pillar School of Franchising with his many Rayisms or that you said in there. Sounds like you've been to the Ray Pillar School of Franchising. All right.
I have not, but I would love to go. I'm sure I could pick up some pretty good nuggets there. Sign me up, Ray.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
I've seen the name before, but the different colors in the name behind you give me a better sense of where it came from and what it stands for. So it makes total sense.
So you were talking about the prospective franchisee and vetting them. So I become a franchisee. Assuming that I haven't been able to listen to Ray for over a decade. Yeah, we won't say how long, but I had a lot more hair and his was a lot darker back then. And he may have had face hair then. I don't remember. It's so long back. So I become a franchisee. What training materials what training do I go through? What training materials do I get? How do I train my employees?
Sure. Yeah, really good open-ended question. I think it's kind of that, where does this go? So we'll start with just generally the research process. I think this would be helpful for listeners who are considering franchising, because we know there's no rule book out there. There's no playbook on, you get this book to learn how to be a franchise owner or research one. Most people, and I think they should, frankly speaking, spend anywhere from a month to 2 doing their due diligence. And for some, it might start years ago. We all know how the game is played. People Google around a little bit. They might talk to a consultant or two and say, not the right time. And I'll come back to this. Maybe that's a year later. Maybe it's 5-10 years later. But when you enter into this kind of room of I want to research franchising, and people start looking at several things, it takes time and due diligence. You've got to understand the model, the systems, the value proposition, the economics, how we train you, how we support you, what you need to do expectation wise at the local level, what we're bringing to the table to help you grow, you're reaching your presence, who you hire, how we help you hire them. You got to learn about those things, and then you validate that to the system. You start to talk to existing franchise owners. And I think we all know that's where the rubber meets the road in franchising. We can talk about the concept and give you the color and the black and white, but at the end of the day, The franchise owner is calling the shots locally and pulling the different levers and making the decisions in that unit level operation. That's kind of where this begins your question, Fred, of now that you're approved, you've been through the process, you've met the team, you've gotten the blessing, you've gotten the agreement, let's go. We have what we call at Happinest a ramping program. We have coordinators that are taking over at that point a new franchisee, various checklists, introductions to vendors. We start to put together, obviously, the website is pre-built, optimized keywords. This is pretty streamlined for Happinest nowadays for all of our brands. They have to begin doing some training with our business coaches, learning the nomenclature, the blocking, the tackling. They're going to come out and train with us. Different brands train in different areas and for different numbers of days. And then there's going to be some follow-up on-site visits, coaching calls are ongoing. We visit owners a lot. We have bi-weekly peer group calls with them and other franchise owners. A lot of learning is through osmosis in franchising. Like there's kind of that setup and here's what we do. You got to do these things right now. We're going to help them with job board placements and give them ideas on ways to attract employees. We have our own onboarding tools to vet out potential work employees for owners. In LMS, all of our brands have a learning management system where there's training modules and portals that different levels of hire go through and take certain tests to move up in rank. And owners are just implementing these tools in their business, but we can't run it for them, as you know, being in the industry that we're in, but you're not in business by yourself, right? You're in it for yourself, but not by yourself. Very different proposition. So tools for training, onboarding processes, all of that streamlined, but the human element is, okay, now we have some active employees that are kind of ready to go. The business is getting off the ground. You got to make those decisions on who's a fit as that local owner and then manage that experience for them going forward. So a lot of meat on the bone at Happinest for obviously customer acquisition and management, point of sale, software, routing, scheduling, all of that's inherent and in place here. There is a human element to hiring, but we bring a lot of resource to help them identify through different ways. Another example would be like geofencing. We'll go after competitors that might be in an area and say, hey, we have an opportunity here. Are you looking for a change? And there's different ways to get in front of different people at different times. But it does come down to you're building that team locally. You're hiring who you want to associate with, make the right decisions. You're going to make mistakes. It's okay in franchising. It's not a home run every time, but you got to learn as you kind of grow and iterate. So to answer the question, a lot of things that we do kind of in those earlier ramping stages, onboarding, we want to get owners open pretty quickly. And I will say that's one of the bigger benefits of home services is there's not a big delay from signing, onboarding, training, getting going. Let's start generating some revenue. You're not waiting for a year or two or more for a build out or leasehold improvements and negotiations. A lot of businesses sign up and start spending money, but they don't have a chance to generate revenue for a long time. You can get running pretty quickly in something like this, which is a big plus.
It's interesting that you mentioned, it makes total sense. I wouldn't have thought of it, that you use an LMS to for training. Which one do you use?
I don't want to name the name, Jim, on here. I'm just, and not that just depending on who's kind of out there, I don't want to open up too many doors on that, but
totally,
it's
okay. I understand, but I think it's fascinating that you use one for that purpose. It makes total sense. I would not have thought of that.
It's got to be duplicatable, right, guys? That's how we know, like in franchising, it's, hey, I'm buying into this thing. I'm entrusting a lot of my life savings into starting this business. I want to make sure there are resources. We want to have a really good experience for a franchise owner and make sure they know coming in, these are systems that we use. That's why you bought a franchise. You did not want to recreate or reinvent the wheel. Right. And I say that for a reason. For anybody listening to this, considering bringing a franchise owner, I mentioned it earlier, easier said than done. I've been around long enough to know certain owners come in and maybe in the first 6 months to a year, it's like, oh, we're going to be marching right down this same path and process and follow it and stay in the guardrails. And it's like, I'm going to start doing this a little bit differently or try this. My market's different. The worst thing you can do as a franchise owner, especially in your first 3 or 4 years of operation, is deviate. You have to focus on the core services, the blocking, the tackling, the day-to-day. Utilize that system. It's there for a reason. It's proven to work. Right. And don't go off of that. People that go off the reservation a little bit or start doing things differently too early tend to be ones that have more challenges and it's more work to draw them back in. So it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens enough in franchising where I bring it up. You got to be coachable. as a franchise owner, embrace the systems that are in front of you. The biggest reason franchising works, in my years of experience, is a franchisor teaches you where to invest your time and invest your money to grow revenue. We're not doing it for our health. We want you to grow revenue for two reasons. We want you to be happy as an owner and build wealth, but franchisors want royalty revenue. That is our model for growth. So our success and our goals are aligned. We want this to happen so everybody wins. That's why we have these models in place and the training and tools and processes that you need to follow, because it's going to get you where you want to get to quicker than you would have on your own. Some people tend to forget that. You're a franchise owner. You're an entrepreneurial franchisee. You're not reinventing a system that is in place for you to operate under.
One of the things people don't realize is your chances for success with a franchise is probably pretty close. And Jim, you can validate this. Probably pretty close to 90%, as opposed to 90. If you don't go with a franchise, your chances for failure is about 90%. So
Probably right. I don't have the empirical data off the top of my head, but I'm guessing that's probably very close.
Yeah. So that in itself, you know, and if you're not following the model, why even buy a franchise?
It's a question I ask myself often in my role, and because I see it all walks of life and different reasons and whys for doing things. But I think people that buy into a franchise, I contend it's not as much financial. You got to make money to live. You got to have cash flow into the home to live your life. And obviously certain business models can scale quicker and do more revenue over periods of time. You got to kind of search for that. But to me, it's more about freedom, flexibility, control of your life and schedule, and building something for yourself, not wearing somebody else's headaches, your boss, the W-2 job. You want to do it your way, and you feel confident that what you've learned over your years can help you build that type of business and utilize those experiences. But it goes back to what you kind of said. I think a lot of that mindset is I want freedom. And it's not, you're not a robot. No one as a franchisor is telling you when to wake up, how to brush your teeth, where to put your pants on, and what you should do at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. But there is structure, and you want to stay within those guardrails to give yourself a chance at being successful. I will say this. I think an undervalued part of franchising, we're talking about a lot of elements that are certainly very attractive. It's the fraternity. You learn from other people in franchising, and that's the benefit to us all in franchising is, hey, this is a guy who's been at this for 5 years, 10 years, 25 years. I get opportunities to engage with those people. They've played the levels I'm looking to start playing, and they've passed them and done really well. Why would I not want to tap into those experiences and say, I'm just curious, what would you do in this type of situation? You might get corporate's perspective, and it might be very similar, could be a little bit different than the senior owners in our systems, right? So you want to utilize those experiences, lessen the learning curve.
It's important.
I'll swear to God, you've gone to the Ray Pillar School on franchising with everything you just finished saying, because I've heard that out of Ray's mouth for way too long. So
you mentioned earlier that there's no book on it, but haven't you read Ray's book?
I probably should, Ray. Do me a favor, sign me up and send that over to me. It sounds like we're thinking a lot alike here, man. Let's put our heads together on this.
Yeah, you got it.
I think we're going to have to actually finally sit down and write the stupid thing. All right. So we've been kind of
here. So
yeah, and we know who the podcaster is. So we've gone through what we used to call the first two pillars of franchising, which is choosing the right opportunity and the support training management. I want to kind of drill a bit into the bit farther on something that one of you talked about is suppliers. We've done pillars principles before on choosing vendors and suppliers. How do franchisees go about choosing vendors, suppliers? Is this something that corporate comes in and says, these are the ones you want to use, and we got you the best deal? How does that work for Happinest brands?
It's a great question. And to answer it, yes, that's how we do this. So all of our brands, we have very similar vendors for certain components of the business, back office, IT, chart of accounts, accounting, bookkeeping. We have, usually it's going to be 2 to 3 vendors selected that we will present to an owner that we have a relationship with. We've vetted them. we can leverage economies of scale as a franchise system. We've got nearly 1,000 locations as of this podcast here. And that's going to continue to grow. The bigger we get, the better deals that we get for our owners. So we have individuals on our team at the corporate office of Happinest that vet vendors, and every year, sometimes twice a year, renegotiate as our systems grow and our size grows to get better value. But beyond the value and the economics, you want to work with vendors that know the models, have relationships with the owners, kind of know the cadence of your services, the needs, the desires. So whether it's vehicles or equipment or marketing tools or back office support, financial support, we bring the vendors to our franchise owners, and we want our owners to work with our vendors. Obviously, there's a reason we've identified them and endorsed them and work with them. They come to our conferences and our region meetings and spend FaceTime with owners. When you go to our conferences and see the kind of the trade show that we set up for a part of the day, all of those vendors are there and paying to be there and sponsoring because they want to work with our franchise owners, and they're going to give a really good value. And as a franchisee, most of them, all, but some come in with relationships, but the majority don't. Say, I've been a corporate guy. I've worked with vendors on my corporate team, but I have no idea who I'd want to use for the cleaning company that I'm buying, or my lawn treatment company, or my pest control, or my window cleaning company. Set me up with the right people that know the business, know us, what we're trying to accomplish here. It just removes a lot of that clutter and time wasted. So I hope that answers the question, but there are franchisees that will say, I've got a relationship with my brother-in-law. He's got an insurance company. Something like that, we would probably look at. We've done it. It's like, hey, to get a better deal on that. But there are certain things where it's like, get it. It's wonderful. I'm sure he's great. But you got to use this because our owners use this, and we're able to bring a lot of value to you and others. And part of that relationship is our vendors that we endorse. So like, hey, we want to work with your owners, and we want to have those opportunities. So it helps the franchisee. It certainly brings them a ton of value. And generally speaking, we're going to get way better discounts than someone that they might know locally, even if it is the brother-in-law, because we have such a large distribution network here.
Jim?
Yes, Fred?
You got a question? Your question's next. I just asked one, so you get to ask the next one, or we go to Ray.
Well, I have a bunch actually, but
Sure.
I mean, I think it's a fascinating model. I was generally unaware of bundling the services like that, and so my question is, do you have competitors who have done the same thing?
Kind of like what Happinest Brands is doing.
Yes.
Yeah, there are, Jim. I mean, I think what we're seeing in
Don't need to name
franchising.
them, but
No, of course not. All good. All good. All good. Really good question, actually. So being in franchising as long as I have, I've seen it kind of change. It used to be a lot of independent brands, and now it's kind of becoming consolidated where private equity is getting involved, institutional capital. You're seeing share shift and consolidation and some umbrellas and what they call FSOs or sales organizations representing multiple brands. Our bent here is to have this all in-house. Okay, with Happinest. When you think of Happinest, I mean, you're looking at it behind me here. Your nest is your home. That's where we're most content and happy. We want to make that a better experience and kind of help you with anything you could need around your home, your happy nest, right? So we hope this is homegrown. We built this, the tools behind it, the branding, and obviously we talked about the brands that we currently have and how we identify those, but you can really leverage economies of scale. You can really accelerate growth of brands when you have a mothership, kind of bringing in a lot of ideas and propagating those through your system. So it's the future. Like to see the independent company out there kind of on their own without resources or equity or a mothership behind it, it's almost kind of becoming the unicorn now. Now it's like most brands out there have something where they're tied into it and have multiple brands. Now, what we wanted to do is stay in our lane. And I really love our approach and our strategy. You're not going to see Happinest Brands bringing on a nail salon or a gym or a burger joint. Like we know our lane is service, residential and commercial. We are good at it. We love membership models, route-based businesses, high frequency customer touch, high gross margin, lower overhead, higher net margin, scalable businesses, typically kind of vehicle-based mobile storefronts. That's our niche. Now, there are a lot of different concepts out there that we're looking at, different categories, nothing imminent, but that's what we're going to continue to build out, are brands that look like that have the right foundation, the right leader, founder led, wants to grow the right way, do it with the system like this. That's kind of our approach here. We're not a sales arm. We are all employees, and we want to bring the best of the best in and have them take advantage of these kind of unique resources that our Happinest mothership can provide.
Well, I really like the business model. I think it's fascinating. And like I said, the name behind you, I hadn't made that leap to the meaning until I saw it with different colors, but maybe I'm just slow. I don't know, but no, I really think the business model makes so much sense. I think it's great.
Thanks, Joe. It means a lot coming from you, man.
Yeah, it's a fantastic model. There's no doubt about it. Let me ask this then. If I came to you and said, hey, I've got X amount of dollars, I'd like to invest in a franchise. What would be the, I don't know if you give me a number. What is the smallest amount I can invest in one of your franchises that would get me out started?
Sure, I get it. Good question. I think most mobile service concepts are a similar investment today, right? When you start to break it down, you look at the license fee to get in, some level of required marketing to get you off the ground, and maybe through your first year as you kind of build up a vehicle, typically one to start with, maybe a second one comes on after a few months, couple of employees, not a lot of overhead, no bricks and mortar. At most, maybe a light industrial kind of space where you store equipment and product. It doesn't need to be a high profile Class A space, very limited expense there. They're lower investments. So if I just kept it simple for the viewers here, generally it's about 150 grand, give or take, all in. And I'd like to see an owner come in with another 25 to 50 in working capital. We talk about those things like, look, you're starting a business, lots going out. There's not gonna be a whole lot coming in right away. You got to live your life and make sure that you're covering your home asset. You know, how are you going to pay your rent, your mortgage, your car payment, your insurance, put food on the table, your kid's private school. Like, you got to think through this as a candidate and say, can I live my life, relatively speaking, well, with the reserves? Maybe my wife continues to work. Maybe I've got some other investments coming in that are going to carry me through while I ramp this. But can you spend a year or so ramping this until the business is starting to cover not just the business expenses, but also provide some consideration to you as the owner? You got to hit certain revenue bands, right? We all know that. And when you hit certain revenue bands, the model, the economics don't really change. We know what the gross margin and the net margin is going to look like. What we don't know is what's your top line going to look like in year 2 or 4 or 6. We can look at it and say, well, we kind of have a general idea. Here's what most do. Now, maybe you're better than that. Maybe you're not quite as good as that. We don't know where that's going to be. So just preparing and thinking more through. I want to have someone come in, got just enough. I'm bootstrapped. I'm going to make this work. My wife is a stay-at-home. I'm leaving this 6-figure income job that I've been at for 18 years. I want to go it alone. Got 2 kids. They're pretty young. Got a lot of bills in my life. Can I do this? Probably got to really think through the time in life. All this kind of comes down to, where are you at? What is your kind of monthly nut as a person? And what do you have resource-wise to invest? And can you kind of keep this thing floating for a while you're ramping up and hitting those different revenue bands? It doesn't take 10 years, but it's not going to take 2-3 weeks or 2 or 3 months. So we got to be prepared for, can you live your life while this ramps? Hope that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. Actually, that's exactly what I was looking for an answer, because a lot of people don't realize that they can get into business for a lot less than they realize, but they've got to have the fire in the belly to do it. They've got to have the
biggest sale that you have to make, as you mentioned, Eric, is to your spouse.
Very true.
Yes.
All right. So
or partner with them anyway. So go ahead, Fred.
At this point, we're running out of time, and while I would like to continue to cover pillar 3, 4, 5, and the goal of what used to be pillars of franchising, we're going to have Eric back on for a second episode to cover those, assuming he's willing.
I think that's a great idea.
More than happy to.
All right. So I want to thank Eric Martin of Happiness Brands for being our guest, victim, martyr. I don't know what you want to call it, on today's episode of Pillars of Principles. Even though it sounded like Pillars of Franchising, it really is Pillars of Principles. Want to tell everyone to have a great week. Ray, any last words?
No, enjoy your life.
Ooh, good one. Jim, any last? All right, Jim agreed. Eric, anything? Any
Wish you
last
the-
one?
If anybody listening to this, I will tell you, franchising is a very special relationship. And, you know, I get people asking me all the time, like, what does it take to be successful? Who's most successful? I will tell you, there's not a magic wand. What I've learned over many years of doing this, and I'm sure you guys would agree, it kind of comes down to the basics. If you maintain consistency, if you're determined and you're willing to work for it, you can be successful in a franchise system.
Yes.
But those are three very big things that you really got to think through where you're at in life. And to your point, Ray, do you have that fire in the belly? Do you have that grit? Are you resilient? Can you work through challenges? Because guess what? There are going to be many. Life isn't easy as an owner. Too many people think, well, this is my time and my thing. Yes, it is. But you are the CEO. And right now, when you start this, you're the cook, the cleaner, the bottle washer, you're taking out the trash, you got to build infrastructure and layers under you. That takes time. Are you willing to work for that? If you are, this could change your life.
Excellent. Yep. Perfect.
Be too stupid to quit and
Thanks
stubborn.
so much, Eric. Great.
Yeah.
Woke up early, dawn's out shining.